All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. It feels like it's been a long time since we've done one of these. Tonight is August 17th, 2022. This is the Upper Dublin School District Finance Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. We have two presentations tonight on ongoing building projects, starting with Dewey Engineering on Sandy Run. Arif, whenever you're ready, or Zach.
And I'd just like to welcome them and thank Dewey for coming tonight. So we're 2.5 weeks from getting ready to open school. Sandy Run, our new building, is going to be opened up and ready. We got a lot of work left to do, but there's been a ton happening this summer. So Zach and Arif, thanks for coming tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So we will get right into the project update then. We can go on to the next slide, please, Brooke. And what this is, the milestone for Phase 3, which was to complete August 25th. That has already been completed. The big items on there were having the school district be able to move out of the modular classrooms as well as the building by June 20th. And I have to say that Bob Lester and his team did a stellar job with getting everything out of the building so that the abatement contractors could then start their work, have the areas cleared, then the demo contractor could start to demolish the building. So there were a lot of steps involved in that, and we were able to hit those dates even a little bit early due to the fact that we started the abatement of the floor tile in the cafeteria over Easter break. So also without the help of the district, that would not have been possible for us to stay ahead of schedule. So we were able to meet those dates complete. To the next slide. You can see the green there is the temporary thing. That was all the way down below the pink. What we were able to do this summer was move the fence up to get 118 parking spaces that the district needed to open school. The parking lot originally wasn't phased to be completed until next year. So we started talking about that June 21st of last year in order to make these changes. So we were able to hit those dates. The red area shows the building has already been demolished. Blue is, and actually since this report was generated, there's probably about half of the space to be demolished yet. They're moving on quite well. The pink shows the 118 parking spots, and the yellow is the temporary road that's going to be put in for the parent drop-off and school bus unloading. And we met with the district yesterday to coordinate the buses where they're going to drop off parents, what is needed as far as sidewalks by the opening of school. So assuming the weather continues to be dry like it is, we'll have more than enough sidewalk to unload the students and load the students at the end of each school day. Slide. Again, this was our milestone phase that we're in right now. So we've already met the dates I just described about the asbestos abatement. Some of that was carried over onto this milestone owner move out. What I do have on the two notes on the bottom there for the big things were the retaining wall that's scheduled to complete in February. We are hoping to be able to complete that sometime in September. That'll be starting within the next 2 weeks. That's big because then we could continue right in with the permanent road that goes around the turf field and begin work on the turf field. The next item down there was I believe the demolition of the building. That wasn't to complete until November 24th. We're probably going to be wrapped up with that again as well in mid-September. And the final date there shows April for paving. Obviously, we changed the schedule since our meeting June 21st, as I had previously stated. So we're going to start paving Tuesday of next week, the 23rd, and hope to have that completed and temporarily line striped for the start of school when the teachers and staff come back on the 29th. Slide, please. So just some progress photos from here. We can see the turf field on the left-hand photo, the turf field. I'm sorry, not the turf field, the multi-purpose field on the corner of 152 and Twining Road. That's been installed, and as you can see, we're maintaining it, keeping it green. The slide on the right shows the demolition we could see a little bit there. We've gone much beyond since this picture has been generated. So I think there's a close-up on the next slide or the slide after. Some more drone shots there. You can see the demolition of the existing building on the left as well as the right. And I believe you can see on the right-hand side that stockpile, it's been even getting larger. I think the next slide, Brooke, even shows it a little bit more blown up. There you go. On the left, you can see that. That is the 45,000 cubic yards of soil that's going to the golf course. That's that pile. The existing building you see on the left, that's since been gone, as I showed you a few slides ago. And they're moving along quite well with getting the parking lot ready to be paved on Monday. But beneath that parking lot, there's a series of stormwater management pipes that need to be put in, inlets that need to be put in against the curb. The curbing has been about 80% complete again today in that area. And there's also 2 underground basins beneath that parking lot, one of which we've completed in order to get the 118 parking spots necessary for school. Slide, please. So this is backing up a little bit now to the modular classrooms and the existing building. I said we had to, the school did a stellar job in moving the equipment and the staff out, but before we could demolish those buildings or take apart the relocatables, we had to remove all the utilities. So you can see the electrical lines and poles coming down on the left-hand photo. And on the right, that's the actual gas line that they're squeezing off there in order to cap that gas line to kill that utility to the building. There's some photos here of the modular classrooms being taken apart. And as I stated, we really pushed them to get those taken apart so that we could get the area cut and stockpiled. And then some strategic demolition of the building. When I say strategic, what we did is we started with the cafeteria first, because we abated that over Easter break, as I stated, because that was a big piece of then starting to move up to be able to get the 118 parking spots that we need. And then we jumped over and took the wall down of the gymnasium there because there was a stormwater management line that ran under there in order to put the curb and the road on top of that. That had to come down. So 2 pictures of some demolition. And we're going to talk about foundation removals. This was some unexpected areas that we had due to grade changes. So those are just some pictures there of the foundations that have to come out, get crushed, and then removed from the site. Those are cuts and fills going on. And when I said there was a path that we took, you can see the cut on the left-hand side. That's where the modular units used to be. They're taking that material because the modulars are still in the right-hand side picture. They started cutting that material right away as the modulars were getting removed. At the same time, the abatement contractor was still in the building, and you can see the fill kind of right up against the existing building in that right-hand photo. So everybody was working very well together to be able to accomplish what we've done so far this summer. Unfortunately, we did hit some rock, and we're continuing to remove rock on a daily basis. Not with this summer, but we're managing to be able to work through it. So those are just some pictures of some trenching that had to happen to place some stormwater management systems, and you can see the rock that we're up against there. Again, the temporary egress road, you can see on the right-hand side, the curb has been installed. Once the curb's installed, we can then install the sidewalks for the students to unload on, and that road is going to get stoned at the end of this week and paved next week. So just a progress photo there. And then a couple of shots of the inside of the building. As you can see, it's been completely cleaned up. The 12-month staff did move in on June 20th as scheduled. And the staff has done an amazing job keeping the building clean. Progress shot of the library. I wanted to point out there was coordination that was involved in the owner moving in furniture and the books and the locker is one of the first areas to get moved in. And there's the planetarium, and I was fortunate enough on the right-hand side to be in there where they were commissioning some of the equipment, so I took a photograph of that. So the planetarium is complete. There's a little bit of lighting that needs to be put in around the base, and the training is about 95% complete in there. Just a shot of the auditorium, and again, we still need to do some training for the sound equipment in the sound booth that's in there, but that area, other than the final training, is the classrooms in the nurses suite have been set up, so I just took a shot of that to show that the owner's been moving in. We moved all the band furniture, I'm sorry, not the furniture, all the band equipment over, and the new furniture has been set up, so those rooms are ready to occupy. And the furniture in the cafeteria. Just took a shot of the corridors with the educational spaces in them. And I've seen the teachers have been into the new middle schools beginning to set up their classrooms. There's a classroom on the left that's been set up. And the next slide shows the science room on the left-hand side that's been set up, and the family consumer science room. Teachers in there setting up her stuff. Wanted to show the outside entrance where the bus is going to be dropping off the students. So on the right-hand side, that's the main entrance, and the left is your backlit letters. That's what they look like at 5 in the morning. And just another overall shot of the demolition there. And I will turn it over to Arif. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. So obviously, just want to remind you the project is still pursuing LEED Gold, which is our $1.3 million grant, which I think Andy can confirm we've gotten most of that, if not all of that money already. So it was really a good grant, and we are targeting LEED Gold. We're on track for that. We can't really do the final submission until we finish everything, which will sometime next year. So, you know, we're still on target. We're feeling good about that. So, all right. So LEED Gold is on. If you go to the next one, we did want to talk a little bit about some of the costs that are projected and pending currently. I want to start off by saying I think we've done a really good job of managing it. Andy's been great with the financing and overseeing all of the costs. And to date, we are less than 1% in change orders across the whole project, across the board. In fact, probably closer to 0.75, depending on what credits you take and how you account for it. So that's pretty phenomenal, getting through COVID, getting through, and that includes that ramp issue that we don't want to remind ourselves about, and all of the other things as well. So that's pretty phenomenal, but unfortunately, towards the tail end, as we had anticipated and projected, we wanted to keep our contingency in this phase, and we do have some costs we'd like to walk through you with, and some of these require your approval and action as well. The first one is we had a budget in there for the fill that we've been talking about for a long time. It's been something that we've been very concerned about. I know we've lost a lot of sleep. Andy's lost a lot of sleep about this, but I think we ultimately we're back to the solution that we originally had hoped for, and it came through pretty close. We had a budget of 150, and the cost is 180. So that's where we are with that. So I think ultimately that's still a good decision, and I know there's an agreement for you guys to get that going and coordinate that work. There is also some allowance we got here for 20,000 because there is potential balance increase, possibly if the 45 goes to 50,000, some number there, and we're going to monitor and calculate that. So if there is more, we are obligated to pay the township a little bit more to pay their contractor to disperse that fill on the golf course site. So that's what that 20,000 is. The foundations and the other stuff that Zach showed you, the items 4 and 5 are the foundation excavation and the rock, and we've got a tally there for what we anticipate will be required to complete that work of $250,000 and $70,000 respectively. Zach did not mention, but we had a sinkhole too that was repaired already, so we've got that allocated at $30,000. We have an obligation to pay for the asphalt cost increase until the final paving is placed, and that's in the contract. So we're just come up with an estimate for what that is of about $80,000 is what our estimate is for that. The storm pipe water, storm HDPE plastic storm water pipe cost increase, this had been discussed many months ago, and we were waiting for a final on that. The pipe has arrived, it's in place, and the final cost has been established at the $159. And that's something we had talked about a while ago. Zach has allocated an allowance of about $25,000 here in case we need some temporary ramps to be installed. We're still working through some of those final logistics there. During the HVAC project, we did do some control modifications to improve the efficiency of the building and how it functions, and we have the balance contractor back in there, and they had a fixed fee contract, and so this will be an amendment to the contract for $16,200, and I think you have the paperwork now for consideration. And then we're leaving a little allocation for additional waste management. Waste management is a requisite for LEED Gold, and so we're just leaving a little allocation because we've run into some other debris and stuff that we feel like we should just hold on to a little extra there. All those add up to $690,000 with the pluses and minuses, and as noted there, we still have a $1.5 million contingency. And so with that, our recommendation is that we process, when we know the final tally, and a change order to the general contractor for items 4 through 9 up above, which if you tally them up, they're not to exceed 614. So the exact number will be whatever it exactly comes to once we have the final tally. But it's a significant sum, so we wanted to make sure the board was aware that this was being expended, and I think you kind of know some of it, but we wanted to formally make you aware as well. And then the balancing contract, we'll have an amendment for that, as noted, for the 16.2. We'll hold on to the $10,000 for the waste management until we know the final tally on that, and then there'll be the $180,000 for the fill to the township based on the agreement, once that work is underway. I will also call out, there is still in the contract $400,000 in allowance available, so we're still holding on to that. We anticipate using some of that, but not all of it. And then there'll still be the $800,000 in contingency if all the other numbers hold up, as noted above. But as I said, it's a project that is probably one to be very proud of. I know we are, in terms of the execution and where we are with the finances and all the planning that went all along. If you think about modulars, you think about all the stuff we got through on this project. I think that's really a tribute to the good team effort from everyone. So thank you for that. And I think that's it, right? Yep, I think that's the last slide. So any questions? One more slide. Oh, sorry, yeah. Thank you. The one more slide is, it's happening. It's going to happen. All right, we're going to get it done. So that's Zach's slide. It's going to happen, and we can see it. The principal's in there. By the way, I had a chance to meet him. He is all into this building big time. So exciting. I mean, it's so great to see people, you know, when you put all this effort in and to see how he's really thought through every space and how it's going to be used. That's a tribute to you, Dr. Yanni, and all the educators. So it's cool to see the building being used for what was planned for, and all the money and time put into it. So thank you. All right.
All right, thank you, Arif and Zach. Questions or comments for the committee? Jen?
I see up on this last slide that we had a parent drop-off. I wonder if there will be parking spots in those 100 adults in the office.
We did meet with you yesterday, and if there's 118, the objective is to get 118 parking spots. Every day, week after that, there's going to be a continuum of more spots becoming available. We wanted to make sure we got the 118 that were requested. I don't know if you actually need 118 for every staff member that's in that building. If you do, then that would not allow for too many parking spaces for parents to come during the day. There are a few spots that we did have allocated. I know when Bob and I and Andy met on the 21st of June last year, I believe we took that into consideration. The objective is to get more and more parking spots every week in the district until the complete lot is done.
Yeah, and I would add to that is absolutely part of our discussion. So parking is going to be a challenge, traffic is going to be a challenge through there until we get the whole site developed, but we will absolutely have a way for parents to get to the school that need to get to their kids.
Right, because we need approximately 100 spots for staff during the day, correct? So that would leave,
The spots that we develop meet the needs that
okay.
what Dr. Ortiz said he needs for his staff in the building. So.
Okay.
Others?
Well, thanks for putting this all together and making this project get so close. We're almost there. On slide 14, it says temporary road and egress sidewalks. The temporary part is that it's the temporary service, or the road substantially going to change after everything is in place underneath and parking lot related.
There's, I would say 15% of it is temporary, so that we are going to have to make some changes to that by the time you open school the following year, and the sports turf field is complete, because the road's going to go all the way around that sports field. Right now, currently, it does not.
And so with that road part being in progress, the asphalt cost that you mentioned, is that going to be still fluctuating as we're continuing through this project next or in the next phase?
It does. That has a potential to change monthly, actually.
And that is why, I mean, that is still why we have that, I mean, that buffer sitting there in the, or was it, sorry, the 80,000, yeah, okay.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I want to say, Art, go ahead.
$118, $117, I saw that somewhere else. But those temporary parking spots, what is going eventually on that site, or is there parking on that site?
When I say temporary, I'm referring to the striping. When the project is absolutely 100% finished, right, you get what they call a wearing course over the top of the base course of asphalt. Then that gets striped, and all the contractors leave the site, and you have a beautiful, brand-new parking lot. We're only going to be putting down the base course this year. We're going to have to temporarily stripe that, and then the following year, that's going to get cleaned, washed, put a sealer on, and then we put the wearing course over the top, and then you get your final striping. So when I say temporary, it's temporary now, but those are going to be very close to the final parking spots that you're going to get.
There's parking.
You are getting the final parking lot, is what we're building this summer. You're just not getting all of it.
Okay. It looks like, Arif, we are ahead of schedule in a lot of items. Was wondering where the turf field falls into place, and Have you adjusted any of your timelines in terms of when you're going to be off the site?
We're going to start the turf field as soon as possible, which is a little bit earlier than originally scheduled. We have the majority of the material already procured for that during COVID. We don't know what weather the winter is going to hold, so I don't want to tell you that because some dates now we're going to be in the turf field.
The turf field, once it's complete, you can use it.
Absolutely.
Unlike
Unlike-
all the other fields that we have
You
on
have to
site.
wait, exactly.
Right.
But I think we're still going to end up, once school is out next summer, to finish the final details. Because if you look at that slide there, that kind of shows you what you're going to end up with, and we're not going to have that parking lot looking like that right now.
Are you doing any of the landscaping soon? I mean, in the fall, or is that waiting?
Yes, we actually have started some of it. The best time to plant stuff is in the fall.
Yeah. So the front of the building, there should be some landscaping in the front where you walk through. I saw one of the slides showed area when you walk in to the right.
There's what we call a planter box in the front. Yes, that'll be seeded. We may get some bushes in there this fall.
Planter box.
Yes, it's possible.
Okay. And then I always have to bring up the fill, because I do that every month. Once the township takes their total that they're obligated plus the additional, do you the additional fill remaining on site that we will have to remove? Okay. Do you the rock, not a surprise, we dealt with. Is there anything else that you're concerned with the demolition of the remaining site?
At this time, we've put all of our concerns on that slide that Arif explained. So anything that we have forecasted or that has come to, we've put on that slide. So as of now, to answer your question, no, not at this time.
Great, and then also congratulations on everything, and especially on the supply chain issues. I mean, you have not come to us with any real concerns in terms of getting the building open, supply chain, furniture. Everything seems to be coming in, and I think it's a benefit of when we first did the project, when we knocked down the annex, I know we ordered a lot of stuff that we needed for the project way ahead of time, and we had it at a better price, and we had the stuff.
Yep, and the district allowing the contractors to store and material also certainly helped.
Right, that's very helpful. Well, congratulations, thank you.
You?
Anyone else? Jenna?
We talked about the path for the carpool and buses. Is there a kind of paved entranceway for walkers? I know we don't have a ton of them, but I live with one, so selfishly, I just want to make sure there's a kind of clear paved path for the walkers to get in.
There is, there'll be a path, the road will be paved from Autobahn down, so they'll be able to step right onto the sidewalk adjacent to the school, and the sidewalk has been complete, and the path from the corner of 152 and Twining, so
Right, and just for everyone, the majority of the walkers for Sandy Run come from the intersection of Twining and Lime Kiln, so that part is already done, right? Anyone else? All right, I want to highlight just the parking lot. Zach said this earlier, but the parking lot wasn't supposed to be done this early. So it's really exciting that it is. Let's not get our hopes. I mean, we thought we were going to be parking on the streets, right? And so I think we need to be willing. It's not going to be perfect still. It's really exciting that we're going to have 118 parking spaces, or probably, I won't even want to commit to that, that we'll probably have 118 parking spaces and get all the staff on site. But, you know, there's still going to be challenges. Let's set the expectations appropriately. And yeah, that road that we're planning to run along will eventually get interrupted by, you know, the bus loop sidewalk thing. So, you know, it's all going to continue to change. And I just want to make sure we're all clear that it's still going to be temporary and messy and a construction site. Yeah, so it's awesome. Thank you very much. I'm really excited that we're going to be, and that was going to be the biggest challenge in this whole project, I thought, was parking this upcoming fall. It's still going to be a challenge, but it's not going to be nearly as big a challenge. And thank you. I mean, for everyone who managed to make that happen, that's huge.
Mark, I want to just piggyback off of
Yeah.
that. And I know our community groups, Dr. Yanni, are really trying to get into the site. They want to get in last month, but we're not ready. And it could take a whole year before we can really rent any space out.
Correct. We're nowhere near ready yet to put any of those spaces in the facility system.
Right.
Well in advance of that happening, that will be included in one of our newsletters and regular communications for the district. So I don't anticipate that anytime in the foreseeable future.
Right, I just want to make that clear, so it's not said before that they assumed that they would be in.
Right. The building's done. It feels like we should be able to use the auditorium, but there's no parking, right?
No
I mean, so yeah, we have some time to go yet before we do more than schooling.
There's also not going to be exterior lighting for some time as well. So that's another issue is once the sun goes down, it's not really going to be a safe space. So Dr. Ortiz will talk to his staff about that as well.
Exactly, and one of the challenges over the last couple of years has been back to school night, for example. The middle school has had to do 3 back to school nights for parking. Even though we have a beautiful building and 118 parking spaces, for this year, we're still going to have to do 3 separate back to school nights until we get to a point where all of the parking is done, all of the site work is done, and then we can have more unified events.
Right, so overall message is great news, things are going really well, it's not done. All right, any?
I do want to say a special thank you to Zach and Arif. Zach's here every single day and really working in our best interests. As we go over to the site and we saw the old buildings start to come down and the parking lot start to take shape, when we think of a couple of weeks, a month of time is an eternity in construction. So I think Andy and I and Dan are breathing a lot easier now because just it was looking a little bit scary. Along those lines, we did have a very small ribbon cutting, have parking, and we're able to do some more community events, and there will certainly be doing that. And we are having a tour next week for our Martin Lane neighbors, because they've been with us every step of the way. Many of those neighbors actually backing right up to the Sandy Run site.
I do want to back up slightly. There was one item in Arif in your list of things, which was the foundation removal. Is there more to say about the nature of that unexpected cost regarding the plans and accuracy of them? Is that, an explanation we ought to give publicly?
If you'd like, I mean, basically, the issue is the existing foundation plans did not conform well with what we needed to do and what was expected. So I'll just leave it at that. I think.
Budget was formed based on what we thought was there.
Yep.
And that turned out not to be what was there.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Any last comments? All right. Thank you both very much. We will move on to Fort Washington. We have ICS and CMTA both here. Who's going to start it off? All right. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name's Megan Early. I'm a project manager with ICS, covering the storm damage work, and I have with me Michael Logan from CMTA. He's a project manager working on the GISA project. So we'll give you some updates tonight, starting with the high school and the exterior. The roof work has been underway. The coatings on the specified areas have been completed on the flat roofs. They're all in progress. The natatorium roof will continue until September 15th. We have been working with the athletic director. They have a water polo tournament being hosted at Upper Dublin on September 17th. So we're committed to being completed and watertight and being an auditorium on the 15th. We will still have some work that will be doing on the roof, but it'll be able to be occupied. Next item is the lights. The stadium and tennis court lights were delivered on August 10th. We started at the stadium lights, and all 4 foundations have been set. 3 out of the 4 were poured in concrete today. The next one and last one will be poured tomorrow. So we are working and coordinating with Matt, the athletic director, as far as the first game on August 26th. We have made provisions to move it to another site if we are not complete by that time. So we'll continue to communicate with Matt on that one. As far as the fencing, all of the fencing at the track and the courts have been completed. These pictures here are the property line at the horse farm. They had a tree clearing service that came out and cleared all of the brush and trees and stumps along the entire property line. So they'll be starting fencing there shortly, installing the new fence. Next slide are some photos of the tennis courts. On the left is the lower tennis court. Since this photo, it's been striped and they've been using both courts. They both received repairs in order to be open for preseason this Monday. The upper court will receive a full depth replacement and will get the same color coatings as the lower court, but that won't take place until the fall. Next items are just a few miscellaneous items. The retaining wall behind the switchgear has been completed, those repairs. The retaining wall by the tennis courts will have to wait until we do the upper courts, the repairs over there. Then we'll come back and remobilize and complete those repairs. As far as baseball, the backstop and ball control netting is scheduled to be delivered September 2nd. So we are anticipating a completion of all of that work early October. There was some repairs at the gym floor. That material has been delivered. We are waiting for that to be completed. The refinishing of the entire floor, though, we'll have to wait till next summer. Just some other items are the miscellaneous sports equipment, the bleachers they've been continuing to assemble, the wind screens for the tennis courts, fence guards, a lot of miscellaneous items that were damaged in the storm have been taking place over the last couple months. There is some more work at the Field of Dreams, and we'll coordinate that. There's just some interior lights that were damaged and things like that. Over at Fort Washington Elementary School, Mobile East has brought the modulars over, and we are rocking and rolling with those to be open for September and 6th. Pico energized the transformer this week, so we have electric. There's scheduled to power that on Monday. Sprinkler ground has all been completed and tested, so right now the only work that remains is the corridor, connection area, and then the interior of the seams, ceiling tiles, final sprinkler, and all to get those inspections completed. And as far as the interior at Fort Washington, the storm inspection that will remain in the fall. Twining's contract has been signed by the Upper Dublin and Twining Construction, but we're still waiting on the insurance company. We're supposed to have that by the end of this week. Twining has started with a lot of the construction work, and we're coordinating this with the GISA project. Pictures show the classroom closets, and then the demo of the VCT floors, and also scanning that's going on for the GISA project for the mechanical contractor. Mechanical contractor also mobilized this week and started installing some of the piping in an area that will be occupied in the fall. So getting that complete before teachers and students is key. And Michael Logan will give you an update on the GISA project.
Yep. So last time, since last time we met, we entered into a contract with CMTA. And so in that contract, there's a comprehensive HVAC provision, a geothermal water source heat pump system with controlled lighting. And alongside of that are repairs throughout the facility to match all the improvements that are going on in the storm damaged area throughout the rest of the facility to give it one new refreshed look. So with that contract, the new HVAC units have been ordered. All subcontracts between CMTA and the trades throughout the building have been executed. Construction conference, safety meeting on site with everyone involved with the project. So there are some other items that are in progress. We're currently compiling all the clearances and required documentation for the project, refining the schedule with all the subcontractor input so that we're meeting all the critical milestones. And we're currently purchasing and receiving all the equipment and material on site so that we're ready for the installation as construction commences. And as Megan touched on, we're also currently in the building, the mechanical contractor to put that first main run of pipe through the hallway. So the schedule and the phasing of the project, up to this point, like I said, I've ordered all the equipment. Mr. Longman and the district as a whole, we were able to hit that equipment deadline by executing the contract so quickly, so that avoided any material cost, and it put us in a good spot to prevent any lead time concerns in receiving that equipment. So since that point, we've also executed the contracts, and we're doing any pre-work that's available as we prepare for the phase 1 work, which is shown in the orange section, the storm damaged area. That is to be completed in December of this year. At the end of the year, we'll follow into phase 2, which is shown in green, followed by phase 3 for the rest of the facility to complete the total project at the end of the summer in 2023. Next slide, please. So the next steps as far as the GISA project goes is just receiving all the material, making sure everything is purchased as we commence the construction activities, and subcontractors are currently mobilizing, getting on site, and starting their construction activities.
And then next steps for the storm damage project are the contracts. I skipped over this earlier. Mr. Leckman's going to go through some of the additional storm damage contracts. You've already seen the Twining contract, and we have a number of more that will indicate as we're getting together all these final costs. That to you guys. And then as far as other next steps, we'll continue coordinating construction activities and focusing at the high school on the lights and getting those ready for, and then also for the modular getting back in school.
Two quick comments before I open it up for questions. So those of you that were on the board remember modulars are at Sandy Run. We have those modulars until the teachers get back. So when you hear that there's still a lot of work to do with modulars, we're always concerned about that, but our hair's not on fire yet because we've been out in front of that with staff letting them know that they would not be able to get into those spaces until our professional development days. We're actively 5 professional development days in the calendar, and we're giving more than the contractually obligated prep time so that teachers have sufficient time to get there. Mr. Mack and I have also put a letter together that will go to the Fort families saying that while the building will look like an elementary school, we're not going to decorate as we normally would because there will be classroom changes during the school year, and those will have to be done in a quick turnaround. So we're going for the KISS principle, keep it simple, Steve, and making sure that when the time comes to make those moves, that we can make them as seamless so that our student experience doesn't suffer because adults have to move. So I think we're in really good shape. The Fort Washington staff, as you might expect, very upbeat because they know that beyond some mild inconveniences, they'll have a completely refreshed building at the end.
All right, thank you, Megan and Michael. Comments and questions from the committee? Mike?
Hi, it's a question for Megan. The high school tennis court retaining wall, are the repairs because of structural integrity issues or cosmetic?
It's cosmetic. I believe there were repairs, or the wall was failing prior to the storm as well. So it is cosmetic, and we will get it cleaned up a little bit before. I know it's still, we have a contractor coming out to clean that up.
So there's not a safety concern?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ichi?
Yeah, just to stick with the tennis courts, I heard that not all of them are usable at the moment. Is that a true statement, or are all of them actually usable?
There is one court that we have a temporary net up for. When we went to replace all the nets, a cap was missing. We found a cap was lost during the storm for one of the nets. The cap, we've located a cap and we're getting in, but right now we're using a temporary net for that one court.
Right, so that the team is able to
Yes.
use all courts.
Yes, yes.
Then a question about the gym floor. It sounds like there will be another iteration next
Correct.
year. What does that mean for the use of the gym now or this year? And what does it mean for next summer when that next part is done?
Yeah, so the area that's damaged is underneath one of the bleachers. So they have it pushed out right now. They have the material there. We're working on getting them scheduled to complete that small patch and seal it and bring the bleachers back and open up the gym. It's still usable right now, just not to its full capacity. But then as far as next summer, we will need to close it down for a number of weeks to resand and refinish the entire gym floor. And that would be coordinated with the district.
And then the ordering of material or equipment for Fort Washington. I mean, from the Sandy Run project, we learned the great benefit of being able to store things and getting things in. Are you planning a similar approach here? And if so, where is it going to be stored and how do we make sure that that is not too attractive for people to go and investigate what's under there?
Sure. So for phase one, which is the storm damaged area, the bulk of the equipment that will be there are all a very similar type of unit. It's a classroom Airedale unit ventilator. And with that, we have decided to purchase all of the equipment, all of these units up front to prevent those lead time concerns. And I've been working with Mr. Lester to be able to store that on site. There's a storage room that we're working with the faculty in the building to move some things around to be able to store all of the pieces of equipment for not only phase one, but also phase 2 and 3 for that, for the classrooms, that is. We're also working on the equipment and with the vendors to schedule ship dates for the equipment for phases 2 and 3 right now, so that we're getting ahead of receiving the equipment when it's needed. And then the pumps, there's a similar situation. There is room in the mechanical room where the pumps are already going to be placed. So we're planning on receiving those very soon, maybe even within the week.
Anyone else? Okay, I want to, oh, Art.
You just have to look over to me, Mark. Air handlers, I'm working on another project at our local career and technical center, and we were just told again that there's an additional delay for one of the air handlers. So are you concerned about the air handlers arriving on time? And I know last month we spoke about the separate boxes that go in each classroom that operates the, you know what I'm talking about? the HVAC system in each room?
That's the Airedale units there.
Yeah, are those, do we have those? Any concerns about delays that you can't control?
Sure. So those were the critical items that we had spoken about with wanting to order the equipment so quickly. So we had a date, a lead time that was provided to us by the equipment manufacturer. So when we ordered that, they came back with even an improvement on that lead time because we ordered so quickly. Of course, with the nature of things, there is always a small concern with material arriving, but there are contingency plans in place if it does come to that.
So let me see if I can explain this question. The upgraded HVAC, we're going to have air conditioning and heating, hopefully, in the building.
Correct.
As each phase is completed, do you turn a switch and new HVAC is operating, or do you wait until the project is completely done to generate, to create the new HVAC systems?
Yes, so turn the switch, if you will. So we'll be implementing the new HVAC system in phase 1. So that new HVAC system will be up and functional when we move into phase 2, but the existing HVAC system will still be functional for the remainder of the facility that is not yet completed yet. So that would be phase 3.
Okay, and then, Steve, we have a Washington lab.
To be
Phase 2, I think?
Correct. You know, as we look to make all of our spaces ADA compliant, this is going to be incredibly challenging to make ADA compliant. There are also some significant safety concerns. The room, for those of you who haven't been there, is just a series of steps. And so there are some significant safety concerns. So we'll be addressing that one way or the other, and information on the fourth thing, but it's time to
My last question is just the flow of construction workers, the flow of staff, parents. Bob, where they're all going to be parking, is there a special area that they'll all be at?
Yes, so we do have space, gravel lot. They installed a second road. There's actually a road behind the modulars that the construction crew will use, which will be separate from the parent drop-off and where the students would walk into the school.
Because I know it's always a concern, but I know, Dr. Yanni, you experienced a renovation while the building was open.
I was just going to say that Mr. Leichman and I both have been through this, and I know Mr. Lesser has been through this as well. So there will be no commingling of the students and parents and contractors. Just also keep in mind, though, we also do require clearances. Even though there's no direct contact, we are constantly checking clearances, but there will be no direct contact.
Is there a manager on site every day? I mean, Zach is there because, okay, you're there every day?
Yep, I'm there
Okay.
every day.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? All right, I'm not sure who this question is for, Megan. It might be for you, maybe it's for Dr. Yanni. But in terms of the migration of classrooms from time to time as we move from phase to phase, how often, can we set some expectations there? How often is that likely to happen for any given classroom, and on what sort of schedule?
So no classroom will move more than once. So to start the year, grades 2 and 5 will be in the modulars. When we move in December/January, 2 and 5 will go into the building, 3 and 4 will go into the modulars. That phase will be done in April, but we're not going to move anyone that close to the end of the year because it would create a double move. And then at the end of the year, teachers will all be assigned back to the spaces that they'll be in permanently. So no one will have to move more than once.
Great, and it'll happen at sort of natural breaks in the school schedule, it won't be, Tuesday you're here and Wednesday you're there.
No, we're going to do our best to put it around natural breaks. And one thing we learned last year, when we have to move quickly, we're able to do that. So even if we're up in rough timelines, we'll have contingency plans to make sure that it is possible again, so that the student experience is not disturbed.
And phase 3 is the quickest phase? It sounds like that's going to get done mostly summertime.
Correct. So there's a portion of phase 3 that can be done ahead of time, and that's the 300 level classroom wing. And then the remainder of the facility, including the gym, cafeteria, those items would be the remainder of the summertime.
Andy?
I think this is really for Steve, and that is, what are we doing in terms of with the outside being in flux with the modulars and the playground, what were the kids doing for recess?
So we still have 2 playgrounds that are operable. So we have the upper playground and the lower playground. There will be part of the parking lot that will be cordoned off, and there'll be some foursquare and whatnot. And then I know Mr. Mack is also working with PTO on some other options, but there is a grassy area down, I guess, for description purposes, between the building and Field of Dreams. So there will be plenty. At any one time, we'll have 80 kids. 80 kids is at largest class right now at Fort Washington. Next year is 3rd grade, 93 kids. So we're going to be really intentional about setting up a schedule about some days of the week you'll be on the blacktop, some you'll be on the grass surface and on the playground, so that, again, the student experience, they're not void of any experience for the entire time that.
Any other comments or questions? Art?
I know we're making a lot of progress. There's also a school board Will that scoreboard be installed?
The scoreboard is functional right now, but the new scoreboard won't be delivered until January.
Okay.
That one does have long lead
Yeah,
time.
the current one's still
But
working.
yes, yeah.
Is the new one look very similar? Is it
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same design.
Seems like- Okay.
Any others? All right, I just want to close sort of similar how I closed for Sandy Run. Let's just remember that while it's exciting that we have all this sense of progress going on, it is an active construction project. It will take some time to get through. There will be times when it will be messy, suboptimal, but I think the team is on it, and we will get through it. So it is an active construction site. Please respect that. Both of these projects.
And one of the things that we're continuing to celebrate and will continue to celebrate intentionally at the beginning of the year is that all of the Fort Washington students will be back at the Fort Washington site. It would have been easy to just say we're going to leave 2 grade levels at Maple Glen. We want all the Fort kids to be on the Fort site.
Yes.
Just a question, I think. In terms of the messiness that you just mentioned, Mark, if anybody has a concern from the community, are principals the first point of contact?
That'll be in Mr. McAleer's beginning of the year communications. The first contact would be to Mr. McAleer, and then if it can't be resolved with Mr. McAleer, it would go to the facilities department and then to me.
And Mr. Ortiz, Dr. Ortiz at the...
Same, correct, yep.
Yeah.
All right, Megan and Michael, thank you very much. We will move on through our agenda. Next up, announcements. Andy or Steve?
On the agenda this evening, item letter M is a very generous donation from a donor. We're actually going to not discuss that at length this evening. I anticipate it's going to come back to the board in September. There are some complexities and intricacies we need to work with on the funding mechanism with the donor, and also the other thing that we're working on is working with the donor to make the language more inclusive. So I anticipate that will come back to the board for the September finance meeting. The board should be able to officially accept that donation at the September legislative meeting.
Okay, thank you. We do have minutes from our June 13th Finance Committee. The members of the committee have had a chance to review those. Are we prepared to formally accept them? Yes. Okay, thank you. Those are done and will appear with the legislative agenda. Diving into Finance Committee reports, starting with a Sandy Run update. Have we gotten the entire Sandy Run update, or is there more to?
I think we have it. We added this just to have our normal monthly update in the monthly budget report.
Okay. Anything to call our attention to in the budget report?
Nothing. What Reef and Zach already pointed out, all of that information is on our budget report. And we'll talk about Township next, and then the change orders will come at future meetings.
All right. So let's dive into that agreement with Upper Dublin Township.
Yeah, so as Zach and Arif walked us through, so the fill has been an item we've been working on for quite some time. I certainly am not going to go through all the details. We heard that. We are at a point now where early on in the project, Dewey looked at that and said, hey, you have filled. The township is considering to a project at the Twining Valley Park project. They need some fills, so he worked out an agreement and was bid spec for the Sandy Run project that we were going to take the fill to that site. It's close. It's 45,000 cubic yards, which is massive. So it's been open because the township has just gone out to bid on that project. Our responsibility for the cost, they actually carved out an item in their bid, which is to take the 45,000 up to 45,000 cubic yards to their product. And then that's a fixed cost. Then the township is responsible for all the work on their site. That cost is $180,000. There's also an additional 5,000 cubic yards, which we could take over if we experience more than 45,000. That's at $4 per cubic yard, which could be up to an additional $20,000. So as Arif mentioned, it's $180,000 fixed up to, we believe there's up to 45,000 cubic yards, and then up to 20,000 more if there's additional. Zach mentioned they don't expect any beyond 50,000. If we would encounter a position where we're beyond 50,000, we would have to find an alternative solution, but that would be minimal per Dewey's expectations. So this agreement is only in draft form, so I was hoping to be further along. We actually just received feedback from the township about 2 hours before we walked into this meeting. So this is not finalized. I believe the costs are finalized. They had 2 minor comments that they requested us to consider. So I hope for this to be in final form by the board meeting on Monday night.
All right, comments or questions? I'm sure, Art, you have something to say about Phil.
Yeah, Phil, how soon will they get the soil off the grounds?
I don't know when it'll be complete. I know it's supposed to start the very 1st of September, so they'll try to get out the 1st day of September. The township has to approve the project first. Once it's approved, then we can start bringing it over.
But I think we should be sensitive to understand that we are saving money by not having to truck all this fill somewhere else. Is that correct?
That's correct, and we're also helping the township out because
Yes.
they need the fill as well. So it's
Right.
it's
So it's a win-win.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship, because if we would have to transport this fill to a quarry,
Right.
depending upon which quarry would accept it, it could be significantly more money than this. So this is a very prudent move for everyone involved.
Right.
And it's certainly a relief to, I mean, it isn't done yet, it has to be executed, but to get to this point is a big step. And it did look for a while like there was going to be some challenge. The $150,000 original estimate was looking like it might not be enough, but $180,000 is pretty close. So I'm comfortable with it, even though it is $30,000 above the original estimate. Any other comments? So members of the committee will move this one forward? All right, and we'll expect to see a somewhat revised version of the contract on Monday night. Capital project costs for the storm damaged facilities.
Yeah, so this report is in response to a board request in June to pull a consolidated report together of all the storm damage costs by building, athletics, and also include the Giza project improvements. So certainly if you have feedback or want to see it in a different format, let me know. What I attempted to do was group this by what I call capital improvement costs versus non-capital improvement costs. When you think about that, I think about that ICF did for us in our facility assessment or facility condition assessment report, right, is what items did they identify in their report, and that's captured in the capital improvement costs, and then all of the other items fall down below the non-capital and then the professional fees. You can also see then the majority of this report is related to all of the storm damage repair work that we're doing. There's really only one line item at the very top where the district is incurring costs, and that is with the Giza project that we're doing at Fort Washington Elementary. So the very top line item, you can see the $12.1 million for the Giza project, and everything else on here is all of the work that we're doing for the storm damage claim work. The insurance proceeds are covering an additional, on top of the Giza 12 million, about $25 million. Capital improvements of that are 16.2 million, non-capital 7.1 million, and then professional costs are 1.7. So total costs across all of this work you just heard tonight for the Giza and storm damage work is about $37 million. So again, I tried to capture this in a way that was meaningful. Again, most of what the board is being asked to approve is all related to the storm damage. The Giza project is really where we're incurring our our own costs to do that work. And certainly if there's questions or if you want to see this any differently, I'm very open to feedback.
Comments or questions? Art?
Just with the Giza, with renovations at Fort Washington, some of the work is being offset by insurance. So when we calculated the Giza project, did we back out the amount that is going to be offset by the insurance or not?
No, the Giza project, we're responsible for paying for all of that, right? There were some, I think, there was some work that the Giza project had to build into it that we do expect when we reconcile with the insurance company at the end of the claim, that there is some opportunity to work that out with the insurance company to get some offsetting insurance proceeds back from the insurance company. But the Giza project is $12.1 million.
Phase one is also storm damage.
We're adding HVAC, right? So that's the
yeah.
It is very deliberately separate the insurance portion of the claim, anything the insurance company was going to cover as a claim, from the stuff we wanted to do in addition, which we're calling the Giza project. I mean, there's a clear line there. In reality, in the actual implementation, there's overlap, right, like HVAC, but financially, we've drawn a line between those two things. Right.
Yeah, but rebuilding those classrooms that were damaged by the storm, that's insurance. A lot of it.
But that's included in the Twining construction contract, right? Twining construction is being paid by the claim. The Giza project then is installing the lights and the HVAC and all that, and that's part of the Giza project.
Right. So the Twining construction, what was that? How much? What was the total amount that we awarded to Twining?
$4.1 million.
Okay. Is that reflected in this?
Correct. So that's, you see there's a line item for Twining construction under the capital improvement costs of $4.14 million.
Okay. Gotcha.
And that's being paid by insurance.
Other comments and questions? All right, I found this to be an extremely helpful report. I mean, I think this is the first place that we have really seen in one place the storm did $25 million worth of damage. Like that's, I think that's really the first place we've sort of seen that number all collected up. And for me, that was really helpful. And I also appreciate the approximately $12.1 million we're talking about for the Giza project. We've talked about this before, but here we see it collected. We had originally borrowed for the final Sandy run, the final Sandy borrowing, but in reality, we borrowed more than we needed at the time. We thought it might possibly go toward a transportation facility, but the money is $1 million, and then the rest is going to come out of the money we've been socking away in the capital reserve. So that's, it's all collected right here in one place. I appreciate that. I don't have any immediate feedback on ways to present it differently, but I certainly appreciate seeing it.
It's an excellent report, Andy, and thanks so much for putting it together. I know it's a lot of work, but it really helps us to understand the severity of 1 minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean to diminish it. In money, it was $25 million for the school district. Not all money in that 1 minute. All right, thank you. So that's informational, nothing to move forward. Let's move on to the storm damage contracts.
Yeah, so as Megan mentioned, there are a number of contracts that require board approval tonight in order to keep our storm damage project moving forward. So as we talked about in June, the board approved an AIA agreement with Twining Construction, AIA being sort of the form of the agreement of $4.14 million. We are going to be utilizing that same template agreement that's already been reviewed by our solicitor. Our professionals are working with all of our contractors to get them on board with approving that agreement basically as is. So we are looking to take this all in one motion to approve these contracts. You have all the contractor names along with the dollar amounts that have been reviewed by and approved by Utica, our insurance company. They are aware of all these. But as we have been doing, the board, we own the contract. The board will approve the contract. Utica is aware and will sign the contract as the payer on the contract. And then we will move all this forward. So again, you can see all the contracts here. There is an attachment in with the agenda item. That attachment includes some details behind all of these agreements. So I can certainly answer questions about the details of these, but all of these are here. They're all part of the storm damage work that we're doing at this point. And I would like to recommend moving all of these forward to the board meeting for approval.
Comments or questions? All right, so members of the committee will move that forward?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And it is important that we keep moving forward on these quickly, especially in the Fort Washington. Let's keep in mind we're on a tight schedule. Titia.
In that, on that first line of the memo for the damage contract, it says substantial completion of the high school roof in 23, 8/18/23. Is that correct, or is it 22?
No, that's correct. We'll be doing work on that roof all year long. So it's substantial work that needs to happen on that roof, and they'll be up there all year. Coordinated with the school, not impacting the school day in any way.
Anyone else?
Andy, I think you appreciate this. I don't know how many of us really do, is the significant damage that occurred at the high school. You know, we talk about the significant damage at the elementary school, but then we had significant damage at the high school, and we were able to get the kids back into that building in 2 weeks, Dr. Yanni? In 2 weeks. So again, congratulations to everybody. But you don't realize how much damage occurred at that high school.
All right, so we've already agreed to move that forward. Let's move on to item E, the air quality study results.
Yeah, so I'm happy to finally be talking about it. In August, a year ago already, the district approved an engagement with Element Environmental to complete an external air quality study. And if you remember, we had started conversations about a transportation facility off of 309, and this was in response, part of the study that we did was in response to some concerns that were raised about potential for negative effects of building a transportation facility in proximity to an elementary school. So while the facility was still conceptual in design, it was important to have that study completed and understand if there were any potential concerns. So we hired Element Environmental. They are professionals in this field. The study, if you remember, was planned for mid-September last year. We all know what happened on September 1st last year. So the damage that occurred, along with our priorities being shifted to much higher priority items, we needed to delay that. Working with Element Environmental, it took until May in order for the space to be cleaned up and available to do the study, and for the equipment to become available. So finally on May 5th, we were able to have that study completed. Element Environmental was on site. They did a study in 4 separate conditions. So they came out, they set all their equipment up. They studied under normal conditions in the morning before morning school traffic occurred for baseline. Then basically after all the morning work was done, all of the buses came to that facility behind the school. They were able to study as the buses were arriving to the facility, the air quality. Buses came, parked, shut their engines off. They gave about clear up. Then they had all buses start at the time. Never do we have all of our buses kind of turned on and leaving the site at the same time. They idled for 10 minutes, which again would never happen under normal circumstances because under federal regulations, buses can't idle for that long. And then all buses departed from the site, and they were able to take readings through that whole process. And certainly I'm not the professional here. I'm just relaying the conclusion that Element Environmental relayed in the report that's attached, is that there were no detectable readings or revealed that any detectable readings of carbon monoxide, particulates, and VOCs, volatile organic compounds, were all in the air prior to air quality. Again, that's important, the worst scenario approach to studies. So, we are sharing this publicly as we said we would. It was a study that was planned to get done. We just received a formal report back just, after the June meeting, so we're just bringing it here. So I know so Lester and I will do our best to answer if there's any questions. If there's any more detail, we may need to follow up with our professionals and report back.
Comments or questions?
I think a little bit, but it obviously begs the question. We promised we would do the study. We've done the study. The results are what they are. And admittedly, we're not done with, GIZA projects and other things going on. But, to be clear, we have not yet made a decision about where to put a bus depot, but we probably should talk a little bit about where do we go from here.
Yeah, well, so like we said, priorities shifted a lot. We're not currently engaged in any serious, not that we're not thinking about it, but it's not, it's not an active project right now. I do agree, where the lease is on the current facility is or the lease extension, I guess is the right word, is only for a year. So it's going to come up again. But we're not prepared to talk about it right now. We just have nothing to say yet. Right? I mean, is that fair?
No, I think it's fair. I think the main point there is that our lease is up at the end of June. So we are going to start to need to discuss some action that we're going to be taking. And so in the very near future.
And to be clear, those conversations will happen at public meetings. So, for anyone listening tonight or that will listen to the audio in the future, these conversations will happen at the committee level before the board takes any action on a firm decision one way or the other.
Jenna? Jen?
And I just want to emphasize, the air quality was actually worse when the buses weren't there, right? It was the morning traffic from 309. Okay. Just want to make sure everyone understands that.
That is an absolute contributing factor is 309. But yes, you're right. The results didn't really change all that much from one condition to another.
On that point, I think it's also worth highlighting, as I read the report anyway, the reports indicated that the buses did not significantly contribute to the levels beyond what was apparent already coming off of 309, but it doesn't say anything about whether that's a lot. I mean, it doesn't say, it says 309 is worse than the buses. It doesn't say whether.
They picked up trace amounts. There's nothing concerning in the data that was picked up from 309.
Anyone else? Did you have something? No? Okay. So we don't need to formally accept this report. It's an informational item at this point. Let's move on to item F, which is our regular disposal of excess, obsolete, non-repairable equipment. Any comments or questions on those? All right, we'll move those forward. All right, thank you. Monthly financial reports.
Yeah, so as we always do, and at this time of year, we have two sets of financial reports. One is looking back to June 30th, and one is for July as we closed it this month. So as we look back at June 30th, that remains open. So we're actually preparing for our audit, our annual financial audit, which will occur mid-September. And every year it's around the same time frame. Nothing is final until the audit happens and is closed. Our auditors always make a number of entries every year, but we kind of feel like what we have before you tonight is pretty accurate with where we expect to close the year. So I'll go through that a little bit here and talk about some of the changes. So when we look at June, the revenue and expense projections is primarily what I'm referring to. So our current projection is a surplus of about 5.5 million, and that's an improvement from 3.3 when we looked at it in June on actuals. And the improvement came on basically both sides of the ledger. So we have about $1 million, revenue improved by about $1 million, primarily from EIT and transfer taxes. So it just came in unbelievably strong last year. But May and June were exceptionally strong. We saw those in our monthly reports. And 250,000 or so was from closing out our grants and doing our final grant reporting for IDEA and ESSERS and getting everything lined up. So closing our grants out every year is a massive undertaking that Ms. Baldessano goes through every year, especially with all of the new grants that we're dealing with, as all school districts are across the state. On the expenditure side, we're about $1.3 million better than projected. And I'll tell you, this is something that Ms. Baldessano and I talked about, and we adjusted for this upcoming year. A majority of about $800,000 is related to the storm damage. And what I mean by that is when we talk to our auditors about accounting for the storm damage, because we're getting it all back as proceeds from our insurance company, it would have made our financials look really out of whack if we were reporting all revenues and on all the expenses, ledger, and then proceeds as revenue. So we're actually offsetting them to not show any expense, basically washing each other out. So we had an $800 expense placeholder that, working that out with auditors, we zeroed out. We are showing no expense on our financials because it's not costing the district any money to do this. That was the big adjustment there. Otherwise, much in line with where we were expecting. So $1.5 million surplus, and what we'll do is we'll continue to report any month if there's nothing material to report, but we will certainly minimally bring back to you when the audit is closed to report our the final financials for the year and to make recommendations on that surplus as we talk about it. If you remember, in June, the board approved two motions, one to potentially commit more money for real estate assessments and medical rate stabilization, and the ability to transfer money to our capital reserve fund for future capital projects, which we know we need to do. On July financials, I'll just note a couple of things here, as July is extremely early in the year for anything major to be happening. But one item to note are the improved interest rates. If you look at pages 3 and 4, so we're starting to get a couple more dollars related to interest. Ms. Baldessano does a great job of staying with our banks and making sure we're seeing the best rates coming in. You see 2% for deposits and up to 3% on T-bill investments, which is a good thing to see that coming in. On the other financial reports, a couple items to note. Page 2, assessed value, we're trending about $7.7 million in assessed value better than budget. So 3.2 million of that, and again, that's assessed value, not total revenue. So 7.7 million in assessed value increases. 3.2 million of that is from district-initiated assessment appeals, which we've settled a couple of those. You see that on the report, and one's on for tonight for approval. And then 4.8 million assessed value from new developments. Page 3 shows property tax collections. July collections were strong. Our tax collector, Mike Klein, noted that we're at $13 million collected as compared to $8.5 million last year. Nothing really jumped out to him other than potentially timing. So we're not reading too much into that number until we get to the end of August. That's a better comparison point because at the end of August is the end of the discount period. So it just could have been a timing where more people paid by the end of July than last year. EIT in line with prior year, but it's a 40% increase, or in line with prior years, but when you just compare it to last year, it's about a 40% increase. And then transfer tax was the other interesting one. Again, summer tends to still be a pretty strong period for home sales as people get settled for the new school year. But even with interest rates rising, we saw 65 transactions compared to our average of 39, which was about 200,000 in revenue. So things are looking well for last year, and we had a solid start to this year in July. So happy to answer any questions.
Before that, I'll just say, one of the things that Mr. Leckman mentioned early on in his comments was that EIT came in really strong. EIT is incredibly frustrating because there's no way for us to ever predict that. And if we ever find a way that we're able to predict that, Mr. Leckman and I will no longer be working here because we'll be able to sell a model that will help districts everywhere. But that's one of the areas that can have a big impact on how well your budget ends, both positively and in times of, in downturn times, it could also have a significant impact if that number comes in lower.
All right, any comments?
Is there any talk in industry about why EIT might be up in certain municipalities like ours? I mean, does anybody tie it to like still we really don't know?
We don't get it at like where we saw large, like this company paid massive bonuses, and that happened not last year. One taxpayer, I think, generated over $300,000 of EIT from one bonus. So there's things like that can happen. I think some of what we're seeing is from new development. So you have the promenade that came in, and we've got more homes, more people, more generating more income. So I think there's a lot of contributing factors. But that's why we look at it on a trend. We look at our trends over time, and we built in significant increase in EIT because we're seeing those trends happen, but we never really know the details behind it.
Art?
Yeah, so in the other financial reports, for example, the transfer tax, $201,000, that doesn't show up in the treasurer's report until next month, right? So this is a better snapshot of where we are.
Correct, and we don't actually receive those funds until August, but I build them in because they're based on July.
Right. Same with interest. And I think we wait next month, I'll see these numbers in the treasurer's report. I think right now in the treasurer's report, we're showing zero revenue. Let me look.
$16.9 million.
16,974, which is, I think, which is the same number in the other.
And again, yeah, and we don't get all the interest right at one time, right? For T-bills and certain things, that's monthly. And some's when it matures, correct? Right. So some of that interest might not show up until it actually matures.
Right, and then who would think we'd be investing in T-bills? That's pretty crazy, but it's paying more than most other vehicles. And then
of the vehicles that we're allowed to invest in.
That we are allowed to invest in based on our policy. Yes. Yes. Okay. And then your balance is 16 million right now. I wanted to point that out, but that's before the transfers that we're planning on doing, you said sometime in November or December, plus the other transfer into capital projects.
And out, we have big transfers coming out for the key project.
Correct. So that 16 million includes any transfer that we did prior to June 30th. That's projected end of year fund balance.
3.7 to 1.1 that we did.
That's already out of the 16.
Yeah, already
million.
out of the 16 million.
Yes, that transfer already happened, so it's showing up
Right.
as an expense in last year's.
So fortunately, the fund balance is more than we anticipated, but with all the additional expenses, Visa, I think congratulations are in order, and, in terms of looking and seeing where we are and closing out much better than we anticipated a few months ago.
Yeah, and I would say it's certainly not something we strive for. I hope to not have a multi-million-dollar surplus, but I think in where we're, I think it puts us in a strong position to continue to improve our facilities. We have facility needs, we know that. So I think it's going to put us, that's why I say we're in a strong financial position, much better off than we were 3 years ago when I started here, so.
Right. And, well, based on our policy, the 8% in fund balance, is that what we have? So do you have to look at the 16 million and see what percentage that is now, or do you wait?
So it's based on our projections, right? And I think that's why we have that's why we have the board motion,
Gotcha.
so we can look at our end of year fund balance and make some decisions on how we want to apply that to close out our audits. Right? So
Okay.
when we commit additional fund balances, if we choose to do that, or if we transfer surplus, it's based on last year's financials. So so it will put us back in, it will put the board back in line with its policy.
And then the last question, page 1 of the other financial reports, we're still showing budget 2021, 2022. Once the audit is completed, that's when we would see the actuals appear in this chart.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, other comments or questions on the monthly financials?
So we haven't talked in a little bit about the CARES funding, because I think we have ballpark, right, 1.5 million kind of left. Is the plan still to predominantly use that for some of the HVAC work that we're doing to offset the Giza project?
It's not applied to the Giza project, so it would have been too complicated to put ESSER dollars into the Giza project. So what we built into our plan was, we know we have HVAC needs at Fitzwater and at Jarretttown, so I've already started discussions with ICS about starting to put together planning to bring back to this finance committee meeting and the board about where we want to spend that 1.2 million. But yes, it would primarily be focused on HVAC at one of those two buildings.
Okay.
One other question, Dr. Yanni, the school safety grants and the social emotional grants, do we need board approval on that, or are you moving forward with that?
We're constructing our grant right now. What happens is that will be a reimbursement. So there's criteria that you have to meet. There's baseline criteria that you have to meet to access some of those funding, or some of that funding. So those applications are due by the 31st. And then once we know if we receive any of that thing, we'll bring an information item to the board as to how we're going to use. Some of that won't be discussed in public because safety is an executive session topic.
Do you remember what we were awarded on those two grants?
It's 159,863 and 159,863.
Wow, so it's good.
Did I impress you, Mr. Schlickman?
Impress me. All right, other comments or questions on the monthly financials? All right, we'll move those forward. Thank you. 22-23 insurance policy renewals.
Yeah, so this is just a quick item. It was easiest just to put them all back in front of the board for ratification. So if you remember when we were approving our insurance policies for this year in June, our cyber insurance policy was still something that we were working on. We had one that was identified that would work for us, but we identified our Willis, our insurance broker, identified another underwriter that was willing to write us a policy that was actually more in line with our prior year. And if you remember, the deductible went up to almost $50,000 of what we were talking about. The current policy that we're under is similar coverage, deductible back down to $25,000, and it was actually about $6,000 less. So I'm just bringing this back as to ratify that and improve all of our insurance policies one more time.
And just to be absolutely clear, the only line that's different from the June line is the cyber liability premium line. Okay. Comments or questions? Right. We'll oh, second you.
Are these changes pretty much the same across in other districts, or is this because of our experience September 1st that we see a big difference?
Are you referring to all of the policies, like the cases across all, or are you talking about cyber liability?
No, really all of them.
Right, so this is industry-related expenses, so we don't get increases based on experience, especially with Utica. Utica looks across their entire book of business, so it wasn't related. There's no increase related to our large claim.
We'll move that forward.
Yes.
Okay. Assist Services Contractor Agreement. Mr. Robbins.
How you doing? Looking to get approval on Assist Services LLC to provide some services that we're currently using the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for. Last year, we saw an increase of about 400% with our displaced students due to the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. Last year, we ended with 43 students still displaced, 14 of which we couldn't transport. To date, our liaison has only received 24 responses from families that were displaced and can't transport as of now. The IU total costs for last school year were a little more than $423,000 for the entire year. This would be a decrease from that. Of the 5 routes that the IU did for us last year that I had Assist Services give us an estimate for, would save us about $158,000 on just those 5 routes. So I actually had a call with Assist Services today just to tie up some loose ends in preparation for this meeting. Through that, I confirmed that we dictate to them what background checks that they perform on all their staff. They have staff on standby in case of absences, breakdowns, and unforeseen traffic patterns. And as far as their turnaround time, it's comparable to what we are getting from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. So for us, this is a win just to be able to make this switch for us.
In our superintendent publication, there was an article just late last week or early this week about districts really urging districts to find alternate ways to transport students because nationally the age of bus drivers is increasing and we're not bringing in the same number of employees that are aging out. And so this is really timely. Not only is it good financially, but when we think about the student experience, as Mr. Robbins said, there were some students we've not been able to transport. This will allow us to be able to transport students.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm sorry if I missed it, forgive me. Did you talk about this is not buses, right? So we can't provide 70 passenger buses. They provide individual vehicles, correct?
Correct. This is individual services. They may be able to pair a few students up for a particular school, but we're looking at passenger vehicles no more than 5 passengers. So.
And as Chris mentioned, they'd be required, you can see in the contract, to have all the clearances that we would have our staff required, so that's all part of the agreement.
Comments or questions? Andy?
I have a question on the pricing. It says here that there's a fuel surcharge that's weekly average fuel price is determined to be above $3 a gallon, which, okay, let's not kid ourselves. A 5% fuel surcharge will be permissible. 5% of what?
5% of the total cost.
Above $3 or if it's $4, is it 5% on $4?
5% on $4. The total cost per gallon.
And how often is that calculated?
Calculated.
Still a significant savings from what we are paying the IU to do the rest for us, what we were last year. So it's certainly if we can bring the rate.
Well, I think the notion that we're paying surcharge for gas over $3 a gallon, I think the bar is set a little low, given where things are. I mean, pandemic took gas down to $2, but it's $3 a gallon in how many months?
Yeah,
And
indexing it to a fixed price actually seems surprising as opposed to some, measurable standard. You can't hurt.
And I think we can certainly ask, but we can certainly go back and ask. It's still a significant savings over what we're paying now, and I'm not even sure the IU has capacity for us.
Absolutely. We ran into that at the end of the last school year as well, where we had students that were moving from their current displacement. Insurance company was moving them to a location that we couldn't transport them to. And when we turned it over to the intermediate unit, they said, we can't help you. It's too late in the year. All our contractors are booked. That said, the contractors at the intermediate unit are using also are hitting them with fuel surcharges. So this isn't, this fuel surcharge isn't just something that Assist Services created. All contractors are doing that as well.
I'm out. Doesn't hurt to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Eat you.
Yeah, so this is for the students who are displaced. If at some point they are no longer displaced, can you then, are you then done with the contract, or do you commit to a full school year?
No.
Is this an as-needed
It's as
arrangement?
needed, and they only charge us for days that they transport.
So if what's then the mechanism if a parent or other, if the student doesn't need transportation on a particular day, do you not get billed for that, or what's the mechanics for that?
So with it, when we set the transportation up, we give the parent notice they have to know in advance, as soon in advance as they can, that the student doesn't need transportation. We contact Assist Services, let them know, and do not get billed for that day.
So those families hopefully will be encouraged to their plan in that respect.
Absolutely, and does not charge us for is what we call deadhead miles. So, the vehicle has to start somewhere. They only charge us for the mileage that the student is on the vehicle. So whether they're going from their initial location to the school or to the student stop, we don't get charged for that. Same with once they drop that student off, we don't get charged for the return mileage as well. Whereas the intermediate unit does charge us for all of those miles.
I'd just like to add something to that is I think that risk exists in our business regardless of contractor, right? Because we still have to go pick a student up even if they're not going that day. If they're on our route, we're going. So that exists with our staff or with the Montgomery County IU staff if someone doesn't tell us they're not going to school that day. So it's a risk of our business.
Can I just follow up to Titia's question, just to clarify, is this only for displaced students?
No, we could use it for non-public students as well. Some special ed, depending on the severity of the case. We're still going to have some cases that we will need to go to the intermediate because they have far greater resources and services. But for the most part, it's going to be be and non-public school students.
Okay, thank you. Andy? Okay.
So you may have touched earlier on one of the reasons, which is not charging us for the mileage to get from wherever they're starting to the student, but it's a pretty significant decrease. So I guess, and you may not know the reasons behind all of it, but I mean, do we know why it's so much less? And I guess maybe my bigger question is, we're not giving up some, benefit or quality to students or anything that we're getting from the IU. It's just
So
much
do
expensive.
you mind if I jump in here? So when you contract with the IU, there are still PCERS costs involved. When you are able to contract out, you're not paying that premium. There are some districts that contract out even related service providers. We don't do that, but this is really, this is like a nice byproduct of using this service as a help for us.
And Chris, weren't some contractors coming from Delaware County last year? I mean, where the IU was reaching out, so we were paying miles upon miles of them to come do this transportation for us.
On some of the routes, the deadhead miles that I spoke of were greater than the mileage with the student actually on the vehicle. And the other thing, when Mr. Leckman and I met with the intermediate unit early on last year to discuss some of these costs, one of the things that they said was that they had no control over what their contractor was charging them. And a lot of that had to do with the, as Mr. Kessler said, the increased fuel prices.
Mike?
And Mr. Leckman, I think you also looked at multiple providers and vetted them appropriately.
Well, Mr. Robbins is always looking at other providers. We're looking to bring another one in the very near future too. So we're working with them right now. So yes, we're vetting them. They work with other school districts we've looked at. We've talked to recommendations at other school districts.
But in this process, you looked at multiple providers and vetted appropriately.
Yes, yep.
So it was a pretty rigorous process, it sounds like.
Correct.
Art?
There consistency with the drivers, and is it the same route every day once we use Assist, that they're picking up the same kids, usually the same driver?
Yeah, it's going to be no different than what we're providing, just with going through Assist services. The only time that you're going to have a different driver as circumstances, absence, breakdown, or traffic.
Would they be part of the software program that we have for a parent can look and?
They would not, but they have their own means of communication with the families.
Anyone else? All right, I just want to, Mr. Leckman, could you just talk a little bit about, I'm a little nervous that the public may see this or see this and think we're outsourcing transportation.
This is by no means a move to outsource transportation. We have open positions that we are actively working to fill. So we're down Mr. Robbins, 5 bus drivers right now. So we are still actively trying to fill all of our position. Again, this is another area too where McKinney-Vento is a very unique situation that we're using to transport. It's temporary based on students' homeless situations that they're dealing with. So this is not a move to outsource. I think it's also why I pointed out that they don't have full-scale buses. These are truly like passenger car type transportation service.
And our HR director, Ashley Kitten, met with and discussed with UDSD this direction that we were going so that they well understood that we were not in any way trying to outsource. Besides the fact we just settled a multi-year contract with UDSD, and you can't outsource during a contract. I think UDSD they were amenable to this. We would have moved forward whether they were amenable or not, but they see the real need that we have for drivers. And so absent being able to hire folks, as I started earlier saying, nationally, they're pushing school districts to think outside of the box to transport students. This is one of the ways that we're going to be able to do it.
All right, anyone else? Okay, so we'll move this forward? Yes. All right, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Food service meal prices.
Yeah, so I will take this. So Kristen wished she could be here tonight, but she is wishing her best from sunny Florida right now. So, and that was planned way before she was on the agenda for this item. So I'll be brief, and certainly she can come back and cover any more details. But since March 2020, school districts have been operating under federal waivers that have allowed for school breakfast and lunch programs to be federally subsidized for all students. As we begin the 22-23 school year, those waivers have not been renewed, which means Kristen and her team will be transitioning back to a model of paid meals for all except those students that qualify for free and reduced meals. This caused Food Service Department to evaluate meal prices and make adjustments, and the recommendation that Ms. Deli is making is an increase of 25 cents for all of the meals, both breakfast and lunch elementary and lunch for secondary. So it would be $2 for breakfast, $3.10 for elementary lunch, and $3.35 for secondary lunch. Justification is we've been talking about the increases are primarily seeing a 35% increase in food costs, 40% increases in costs for items, and percentages increase, if you look at it, is high. If you remember, we've not increased prices since 1920, since the meals have been free. So this was really a 3-year cost increase being built in. So both Kristen and I feel this is, we're able to sustain this. Kristen has a healthy fund balance for service, and we have a high-year plan to make sure we can sustain over the long term.
For everybody, the food service is effectively a self-sustaining separate business. It does not operate out of our regular general fund. Comments or questions? Art.
I don't know if Mr. Leckman or Dr. Yanni heard that there are some districts that are continuing to cover lunches and breakfasts for all students. And I think those are the districts that have a significant number of students already on free and reduced lunch. Was that an option that we looked at, considered?
We would not qualify for that waiver. Some school districts do qualify for free lunches for all students. We do not fall into that category. There was no way we'd be able to sustain operations by self-funding that from fund balance.
Okay.
Other comments or questions?
But as a reminder, at an individual student and family level, if there is need, there are absolutely still, free and reduced lunch programs available. It's just not a district-wide thing.
That is absolutely correct, and Kristen can certainly talk more about that. But yes, the free and reduced programs are still available to any families that need it. Kristen and her department can certainly help with any families that need help filling out forms. So certainly feel free to reach out to Kristen Deli if you want to talk over that, and she can assist you.
Dr. Yanni, there's also Act 55 that I'm doing, and changes with the food programs and of going from $50, I think, to $75. You could explain that better than me.
Accumulated debt, right?
Yeah, accumulated debt.
Right, there are some changes that Ms. Deli is aware of to make
Is
sure.
that policy, or is that's just?
It's law.
It's law, so we don't have to update any.
Right, I believe our policy says something about applicable law.
All right, and yes, Darlene.
I'm just wondering, obviously, school's starting in a couple weeks. How is all this information being communicated to families?
So principals, once this is approved on Monday, principals send out information on Thursdays. So that information will go from the principals. It will be in our office newsletter. It will also be on our website and on our social media accounts.
We're using that same software that we had prior to the pandemic, where parents add money to the account. So that will all be brought back.
Correct. It's still active. We just haven't been using it. Primero Edge, I believe it is.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll move that forward? Yes. Okay, thank you. Delinquent Tax Collections.
Yeah, so this is Portnoy Law Associates handles we have an agreement with them. They handle our delinquent tax collections, property tax collections. So process-wise, at the end of every December, any unpaid taxes do get turned over to Portnoy. The other option potentially is the county collects, but Portnoy is much more effective and efficient at collecting delinquent taxes. So Portnoy reached out. This is a required contract amendment for all of their clients. There's a contract amendment along with a board resolution approving appointment of solicitor, interest assessment, and attorney fees and collection fees added to the amount collected as part of unpaid real estate taxes for delinquent accounts. Portnoy, as I mentioned, was required to make a minor change in its collection process in response to new guidelines implemented by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So it is extremely minor. There is almost no impact to the property owner from this change, but it was just a change that they were required to make to comply with the law. And as such, we're required in order for them to continue to provide that service for us to approve these two items.
Comments or questions? Okay, we'll move that forward. All right, thank you. Settlement stipulation at 0 Cedar Road.
Yeah, so this is a district-initiated appeal that we have reached a resolution on with the property owner. So this appeal was on the land value of Madison Estates for the portion of the property where the senior living facility is planned to be developed. So the result is an increase of $81,597. While this is a good result, it's a good result for the short term. So tax revenue increase, it's a good result in the short term because eventually this property will be developed and we'll be collecting taxes on it. But it certainly is a pickup in the short term until that property is developed. As the facility is developed, very similar to the promenade, we'll see probably quarterly assessed value increases that will grow over time. But again, that facility is not yet being developed. So for the next year or so, it's a nice pickup for the district.
No retroactive component to this?
There is not.
Okay. Comments or questions?
So am I correct, this is not for the entire Madison Estate property? You said it's just for the portion for the senior living facility? Okay.
That is correct.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move that forward. Thank you. Item M, as discussed earlier, we are not going to discuss tonight. We expect that to come back next month with revisions around the financing and around the language for inclusiveness. So let's move on to item N, the BitDirect ViewSonic interactive panels. And I see Prakash coming up.
Good evening. So a little over a year ago, we adopted ViewSonic panels to support classroom instructions, and the first building that was outfitted with the ViewSonic platform was Sandy Run Middle School. So if you've been there, you've seen them mounted in the classroom. They look beautiful. So what we would like to do is continue to integrate ViewSonic panels into other buildings where the existing AVR boards and the short throw projectors are reaching end of life. So as they are aging out, we will replace them with the ViewSonic, allowing us greater consistency across the board. One of the things that I would like to point out in the contract that's in front of you is the pricing. It has not changed since the very first set of panels that we have purchased. So the warranty is the same, the support service, the resources, they're still making all of those available while maintaining the price that was offered to us when we initially purchased the panels almost a year and a couple months ago. So we would like to move forward with the purchase of 10 additional panels, which will be used again to replace those panels that have reached their end of life. Questions?
Questions, comments? So these will be all over the district wherever they're needed, not in any particular spot.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move that forward.
Yes. Thank you.
Prakash, thanks for waiting till the end for a short one. All right, we are up to public participation. If anyone would like to speak, please come to the mic and you know the drill.
It's been so long, we had July off. Okay, so first of all.
Name and.
Oh,
name
my
and
God,
location.
and I forgot it, right?
We're out of
Didn't even
practice.
tell Ambler, I'm sorry. I missed my intro. So having Arif and company leave before we can ask questions of them is continuously irritating to me. Frustrating, I'll say, better word. So we have heard rumors among the community that there's been foundation issues along with all the neighbors on Martin, and I'm curious about that. We've also heard that the gym floors are buckling. They're trying to fix them now, which are their brand-new floors, and they're buckling, and they're sanding them already brand new. Wondering if that's true. Also, we have heard that the fitness room, which I thought was supposed to be the wrestling room, because I thought we were supposed to get a wrestling room in this new building, is no longer going to be a fitness room because we don't have the money for the equipment or something like that. And so I say, why not make it the wrestling room that I think we don't have there? And I think you answered my question about student tours and back to school night. Sounds like we're going to have back to school night, which would be great because it'll be 3 years, I think, we haven't had an actual in-person back to school night at Sandy Run. Landscaping, my motto is less is more. You see the pots outside of Sandy Run, the old building, haven't been filled. They were filled with weeds. Things grow. No one takes care of them. There's a whole conversation about who takes care of them. The parents who start a garden committee and then grow all the stuff, and then they're no longer in that building, and then it looks bad. The rock confuses me that they had issue with rock, considering the property that it's right next to it has 2 huge quarries, that they quarried those stones and built actually the house that is Manufacturers Country Club. So it's interesting to me that our experts didn't know there was going to be rock underneath the foundation, but whatever. The kids at Fort Washington are wondering where they're going to have recess because they lose that bottom thing. Also, the community is quite upset, including me, that it seems that our equipment, desks, chairs, scoreboards, other things, trophies, things in that building seem to have been in an ash heap of trash now, as opposed to maybe going out on auction. I know that Archbishop Wood has recently donated a bunch of equipment, and it seems a shame. The Star Lab, I think it seemed to me, and I'm not an expert in ADA, but you would come in the front door. There's a whole level, that level. So there is space to have wheelchair or handicap accessibility at the top, but that's just my 2 cents. That's a great space at Fort Washington. Parking, buses. We have 10,000 million parking spaces throughout that industrial park, and I cannot believe that we can't find 50 of them to rent, buy, borrow, whatever. Matter of fact, we have Toll, who is building an exorbitant amount of houses in our area that has a building there with a huge parking lot where the convention used to be. I don't know who owns it, but I mean, I can't believe we can't find 50 spots somewhere else at a reasonable price, even working with the township and using some of those spots at the library. And certainly get something better than a trailer, but it doesn't have to be an $8 million building. The Zero Seater actually has an address. It's 501 Madison now, and it is all 4 stories are up. The lights are on every night. It's in my backyard, and there's a lot going on right there. So it isn't just land anymore. It is well on its way. I think that's it. Oh, and another reason about the parking garage situation. This is why 6-ish years ago, the committee said, yes, we need a new building, but not until after we assess all the other buildings, knowing we also needed a bus depot. And so before we spent the $76 million on one building, we were supposed to be better planned back then. Thank you.
Hello.
You can just hold it if you want.
That's all right. Ted Fricker, Drescher. I wanted to agree with the disappointment these gentlemen left already. I would like to have had them answer questions for the public too, because I have a couple, and I'm not sure if the folks here can answer it. First is, I think Mark was right. I'm glad he asked, Mr. Stroh, I'm sorry. I'm glad he asked about the $250,000 overage for the foundation. They really didn't give an answer, in my opinion. I'd like to know more about that. It's $250,000. We're debating here about 5% fuel surcharge for 20 minutes, but we let him walk away with $250,000. I think for comparison, I'd like to know how many spots were in Sandy Run before the construction, because you're saying 118 now. That could be, more than was before. That could be 50 less than was before. If there's a number we can sort of understand what the difference is going to be, I'd be curious. The $159,000 for the additional, for the corrugated pipe, like, what was the original budget on that, just out of curiosity, so we know, is that a 10% overage, is that a 50% overage? Just sort of interesting there. And you noted there's going to be no external lights. That's a concern as we get into fall and winter here. When is that going to be corrected? How soon? We have, kids going out at night, potentially going into that building, and just concerning to think that there's not going to be exterior lighting there. We talked about, just something a little off topic here, I think we can talk off topic, but I find it offensive on the school district's website, there's a political position paper about charter school funding. As a parent who was forced to put their kid in charter school because they didn't trust the virtual option that Upper Dublin was offering, the numbers they are quoted, $1 million more, are sort of deceitful because they don't talk about the number of kids that went to private school with no additional cost to the district. And it also sort of belittles the parents like me who had a terrible experience with their kids in the virtual option, understandably towards the end of 2020 school year, and then had to make that tough choice to put them there. And I will say that the cyber charter school that my daughter goes to with an IEP did a much better job than Upper Dublin did in educating her, so she's still there. And it's just when you see things like that on your school district's website, it makes you take pause as a taxpayer. And finally, Mr. Sirota, you and I both had discussions previously, but I'd really like to get on the record a position from the district about the 2007 referendum for the high school funding. When the high school's paid off, what happens to that referendum increase? Thank you.
My name is Caitlin Johnson. I live in Ambler, and I have 3 kids that are going to go to Fort Washington. So I just had a quick question about the bus depot. I saw the link when we were here, so I started reading it, and I have a few questions, but I was just curious who I could direct my questions to, because I don't necessarily need to tell the whole board. But if you have questions about the air quality report, who would I ask? And also, is there any other reports? Have we ever did air qualities for any of our other schools that we can even do comparison, or other neighboring schools that could? Because I'm just like kind of looking through the numbers. And there's an extension, you said, of 1 year of where the bus depot is currently. So is that meaning this June that you will be re-talking, adjusting, thinking about future plans? Because I am just one of the concerned parents about having the bus is so close to our children because of safety, a whole bunch of safety concerns. But thank you very much.
Seeing nobody else, I will close community input, and we'll see if there are comments from the administration or the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Mr. Lester, unless you tell me different, we have not received anything from any of our neighbors on Martin Lane.
No, we have not.
I know early on there was one person that came forward about foundation work, but there was digging for a pool. So that was the only thing that we know of specifically about our neighbors on Martin Lane. The gym floor in the main gym at Sandy Run did buckle. The floor expanded, and so they're in the process of fixing that right now. It'll be fixed prior to the first day of school. That was a contractor error. It's part of, the punch list process that we're going through to make sure that that's interesting about the fitness center, because I've rumored that we don't have to outfit the fitness center several times, and we actually increase the budget, as the board knows, for furniture and equipment. The fitness center is actually going to use space, so it will be used for wrestling. There is some fitness equipment in there, yoga and mindfulness into our health and ed fitted the way that that we had planned for to be outfitted. So there's no concern about not being able to outfit it due to funds. Fort Washington, Mr. Mack, make sure that this information gets out to families, but we have the upper playground, the lower playground, the grassy area adjacent to the lower playground, and we'll also be using a portion of the parking lot that will be sectioned off for students to play in. And as I said earlier in the meeting, we'll be intentional about rotating kids through so that kids aren't in just one spot. Things disposed of in Sandy Run. So prior to the building going down, furniture that was new or was already moved over to over to the other building. For I think it was the first year in the district from the Corbett Center, we bought desks for collaboration spaces and whatnot. So anything that was still usable, anything that was still in decent shape was moved over to the new building. Keep in mind that there had not been a lot of purchases for Sandy Run over the last couple of years because the building was going to be demolished. As I mentioned, the Star Lab at Fort Washington, right now it's there. It's not a priority at this moment because the priority is getting the instructional spaces that we need to fully reopen that building. So I expect that we'll be able to share some information about the Star Lab in the coming months. We will make sure that we get clarity around the extra cost for foundation work. The question that was asked tonight was actually a question I posed to Mr. Lester saying we hire professionals. So how are we finding out now that there's some extra costs for elevations and whatnot? Mr. Lester, in terms of parking, do you know roughly the number of spaces we had at the old Sandy Run?
No, it's something I look at record.
Okay, so we can get that.
Yes.
I am confident. I remember.
I said there 118 is not the complete. That's just what they're delivering to us on day one. So there will be a number of more parking spots than that.
I do remember from our long planning meetings back prior to the project even going out to bid that we made sure that there is ample parking. So we'll get that. We'll get that number. The external lighting, there will be some external lighting, although it will not be fully completed. When there are nighttime events, we'll make sure that there's adult and staff supervision outside to facilitate anyone coming or going from the building. Regarding charter funding, the information that was on the website was specifically about charter formula reform. I've said, I know a number of board members have said that it is absolutely a parent's right to send their child to whatever school they want to go to. I spoke at length at a board meeting about why we need a charter school reform, charter funding reform, namely because the law was written the same year that I learned to drive and has not taken it. That was supposed to be a joke. I know we've been here a long time, but in some cases, districts are overpaying the cyber charter for students there, and in some cases, with students with extremely complex needs, the funding that the district gives to the cyber charter school isn't enough. And so what we're working with our legislators on is a common sense approach to making sure that the funding that leaves the district to go to a cyber charter school really meets the educational needs of those students. Parents absolutely have a right to send their kids wherever they would like to go, but we need to look at that funding formula. Questions about air quality, if you would send them to Mr. Lester, he'll make sure that he gets back to you, or at least lets you know when he will get back to you with some answers. And regarding if we've done testing before, I don't believe we have done testing before. And interestingly enough, I reached out to superintendents in the 4-county region, so Bucks County, Delaware County, Chester, and Montgomery. And I asked any superintendent that has a transportation facility near one of their buildings, or if they park their vehicles anywhere near the building, had they ever done air testing, and the answer from all of them was no. And so it's like regionally here, right around Horsham. If you look at Hallowell Elementary on 611, when you're in their third wing, you look down on top of the buses. Springfield Township, there are a couple districts in Delaware County, and no one indicated back to us they did. But again, if any questions can be, he will get back to you. Regarding the budget for the pipe, we'll get that number as well. And then the high school referendum, that millage starts to, I'm trying to come up with the right word,
It's rescinded.
Rescinded.
Yes.
In 27, 28.
I think it's
No.
So so it rescinds over 3 years. The first of those years is 2029, 2030, I think. I could be off by a year, I'm pretty sure, which is about 0.6 of a mil. And then the following year, 2030, 31, is about 1.8 mils. And then the third year is another 0.6 of a mil. There's a lot of subtlety to it. I'm a little nervous about saying 2 sentences about it because it's complicated and easily misunderstood. And at some point, as we get closer to that point, we'll need to develop a thorough way to present this information that hopefully will be clear. But that, I guess that's the shortest version I can give you. But I'm willing to sit down with you and go over it. I just think it's not something that's easily digestible in 2 sentences. I'm sorry, I sort of took your.
That's okay. I think that was just about everything.
Yeah, so the only other thing, yes, to answer, there was a question about the contract extension for the current transportation facility. So we're on a year-to-year thing. It expires every June, so it will expire again in June. Months for next June. That this topic will come sometime soon, but we don't have anything prepared. We don't have any formal discussion to do it at this point. Anything else from the administration or members of the board?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. So moving on, I will just announce our next Finance Committee meeting will be Wednesday, September 14th at 6 p.m. here in the Cardinal Room, and we are adjourned. We'll take a short break and reset for the Policy Committee.
Is that meeting really the 13th?
I have Wednesday, September 14th.
I'm just looking at my calendar. I think we changed it to, we went back to the 14th?
I'll take a look.
Okay.
I'll take a look. Thank you.
All right, well, we will get that word out publicly as soon as we can confirm it. But for now, we're going to say it's Wednesday, September 14th.